Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge, my weekly wrap-up of all things bookish, booktube, things I want to talk about just in general. The first thing I want to talk about is what I've been reading. I have gotten a little bit into March Mystery Madness this month, which I hope to get to more of here at the end of the month. In part, I think I'm kind of optimistic about that because I did finish my fifth BookTube prize book this week, which I've decided not to talk about until I do the final wrap-up, which has irritated some people, and I'm sorry about that. That's just kind of what I decided to do, and so that's what I'm going to do. But I did finish that, and that has then leaves me with one BookTube prize book, which I've started, and I think it's going to go relatively quickly, so I'm hoping to get to more mysteries. I did start Marilyn Maya Mendoza, the baby boomer booktuber, and I did start our buddy read of Endless Night by Agatha Christie. And I'm hoping to check in with her in a couple of days. I have started reading that. I also started reading Innocent Blood by Petey James, one of my favorite mystery writers, which I just barely got into, but I read the opening chapter, and I think it's an intriguing setup. This is one of James's mystery novels that does not involve Inspector Dalgleish or the character who is in the series that starts with an unsuitable job for a woman. This is just kind of, I think, a standalone, and I think that's going to be interesting to read with James, who I do think is a master of kind of the formal police procedural type mystery, so I'm looking forward to that. I did finish The Carter of La Providence by Georges Simenon, which I just enjoyed thoroughly. One of the great things I think about Simenon is he's able to kind of put you in the world in which his story is set, and so far I've read 4 of these and 4 of Simenon's works, and I don't think any one of them is set in exactly the same place. This one is set along the canal system in France, right around kind of the early third, I'd say, of the 20th century, and you may remember that I really got into watching narrowboat videos for a while on YouTube, and those are on the canal system in England, and so I was really impressed with how kind of thoroughly immersed in that kind of canal world the novel was. Not an incredibly complex mystery, but I think a really interesting story, and this one almost felt more like a story than a mystery. There wasn't a whole lot of mystery about who had done the killings at the heart of this little novel, but there was a lot to kind of learn and dig out, and some really interesting stuff, and so I really enjoyed that. I also, you may know, have been reading The Price of the Ticket. I forgot to bring the book in here, it's in the other room. The Price of the Ticket, which is a collection of James Baldwin's nonfiction, and in that, in several places, Baldwin mentions the black writer Chester Himes, and so Chester Himes wrote stories which, or wrote a lot of things actually, but some of his novels are called the Harlem Detective novels, and so I wanted to read these, and so I bought 2. I bought Real Cool Killers, which I saw someone else was reading, maybe it was Jack, and I also bought Rage in Harlem, and I'm hoping to get to one of those 2 this month as a part of March Mystery Madness as well, and so I'm kind of really excited about that. I did want to also just talk about one issue that came up that I saw raised on Twitter yesterday, and it had to do with a tweet from Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, I really enjoy Neil deGrasse Tyson's Twitter feed, but this was one of those tweets which people put out there that irritate me all the time that have to do with teaching. So I'll put an image of the tweet over here. Tyson says, "Some educators who are quick to say these students just don't want to learn should instead say to themselves, maybe I suck at my job." So this kind of brought up, and kind of as a retired teacher and as someone who's gone back on a very limited sense to do reading tutoring and working with 6th and 5th graders, this is one of those things which people put out there all the time about teaching and education, which irritates me. I don't know a lot about Neil deGrasse Tyson's background in education, I assume, or background in teaching. I assume it's mostly at the university or college level. He is a fairly serious he is a serious intellectual here in the United States, in the world of physics. So I don't know if he's done a lot of public school teaching, but one of the things that irritates me, and I think it probably irritates lots of teachers, is the assumption that people who aren't teachers have or make that they know everything about teaching. I don't know of another profession where so many people are convinced that they could do the job of teaching as with the teaching profession. Back when I was a more social person, my wife and I, usually my wife took us to places or parties or meet with people. People would ask what I did. I told them I was a teacher, and they would say something like, "Oh, I always wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't want to do it. I didn't think I didn't want to do it for that small amount of money. Teachers aren't paid enough, etc." And this kind of expressed this longing that they always wanted to be teachers, which is fine. But if you then engage them in discussion, you find that they have a really idealized view, I think, of what would happen if they were teachers. I remember talking to a man who said, I wanted to be a teacher, I didn't want to do it for the money, and we were talking along, and I said, right now one of the issues I'm having are just, discipline problems in some of my classes. I was early in my teaching career, and discipline issues were a large part of my problem. And he looked at me confidently and said, "Oh, I wouldn't have any discipline issues." Well, let me just assure you right now, there is no teacher that's ever taught who does not have discipline issues at some point. Now, the longer you teach, the better you get at dealing with discipline things and the fewer discipline issues you have. But there's no teacher who doesn't have discipline issues. So, people think they would just walk in and automatically be able to command a group of, let's say, 30 17-year-olds to do exactly what they wanted to do, and none of them would ever misbehave. Or, even more difficult to manage a group of 25 to 30, 12, 11, 12, or 13-year-olds, and that none of them would ever have, any discipline problems. Well, this is just ridiculous. And it's also ridiculous to assume that every single student wants to learn. So this goes back to one of those things which people say all the time, kids are naturally curious, kids naturally want to learn, and I don't disagree with that. They do. But they don't necessarily want to learn the thing that you're trying to teach them. This is kind of the problem. They don't necessarily want to learn long division. They don't necessarily want to learn, how to break down a piece of writing. They don't necessarily want to learn about, the events which led to the American Revolution and the building tension between the American colonies and England. These aren't necessarily things they want to learn. I agree that all kids want to learn. They want to learn something, but not necessarily what you want to teach them. And the idea that someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson or anyone else could just step into a classroom and automatically make every single student in that classroom fascinated every single day with the lessons they had to teach is just naive. And to assume that you could, and to assume that any teacher who complains about students not wanting to learn is just bad at their job is irritating, and it's arrogant. I think a lot of people think they know, how teaching works because all of us went to school. We were all in school. We all had teachers, good, bad, excellent, terrible, and we all think we, know what we would have done differently. But I assure you, it's a lot different thing when it's you who has to make those decisions, and it's you who has to try to engage all those students. I can confidently tell you, I don't think at any point in my teaching career did I have all 30 of my students equally engaged in what I was trying to teach at any time. If you think about that, think about yourself at the last time you were at a conference or the last time you had to listen to something for an hour. You had to listen to or respond to or participate in a lesson or an event for an hour. Think about yourself at church. Are you engaged every moment? Is every lesson something you want to learn about? Kids are the same way. In some ways, they're far more easily distractible. So this idea that you can engage every student every moment, and that every teacher who expresses frustration with the idea that kids don't want to learn is just bad at their job is ridiculous. You need to be aware that there's a lot more involved in teaching than just standing up and talking about the most interesting things you can think about at any given time. Teachers don't even get to really choose what they teach. Curriculums are established by the state, they're established by local school boards, etc. They don't even get to choose necessarily what they teach. They don't necessarily get to choose what they teach on a given day. And the simple truth of the matter is there's some things that it's difficult to make exciting. There's some things that's difficult to make engaging. Think back on your own education. There are lots of things you learned, not because it was exciting, not because it was engaging, but because it was just kind of drilled into you and you did it over and over again. there are some elements of that in public education and in teaching. So I just want to stand up and defend teachers here for a minute and say, just because you hear a teacher complain about their students doesn't mean they're not dedicated. It doesn't mean they're not excellent, good teachers. They may be bad teachers. They may suck at their job. What I would tell you is, in my experience, is that teachers who truly suck at their job, who dislike their job, don't hang around for very long. The teachers who've been the longest have a tendency to have had some reason for being there. Now, it is also true near the end of a teaching career, you do kind of become a little bit burned out. But, please keep that in mind the next time you see something about teachers, the next time you want to complain about public education or teaching. I have a lot more thoughts on this, obviously, but I'll leave it at that for a day. There you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge for this week. I look forward to your comments in the comments section below, and as always, thank you for watching.